So I've opened up the meeting notes. Please add your name to the attendees. What we have for today is we we need to make an epic for what we're going to do for 1.2. We have 75 open issues, which is large for a working group, and we need to decide what's going into 1.2. I wanted to show a demo of a Istio control generation tool for common Istio tasks that I have been experimenting with. We have a user survey that we want to send out, and I wanted to get feedback on the kind of questions that are on it. I did this with Ram. John was asking about the operator. I don't have any good information on that. Maybe someone else does. The rule manager demo has been postponed. I wanted to ask why Istio CRDs don't have a status field, but there may not be time for that. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So these are the 75 open issues we have. Very few of them are bugs. They're mostly things that, or if they are bugs, they're things that I don't know how to fix or how to close. Like this Grafana thing, I think has since been fixed. I'm not sure if the reporter goes back and checks it in. So we need to sort of wrangle these down into what we want to do for 1.2. Some of them have been set 1.2 by me or others, but we want to make an epic listing all of the ones that we want to do.
And Ed, are you intending to use GitHub to define that epic and to flag within GitHub?
There will be a GitHub epic. I'm going to have trouble typing and talking at the same time. If someone wants to write down these, Lee, do you want to write these numbers down as we go through them and then create the epic?
Sure.
Perfect. We can go back and fix up the epic, but we want a list of sort of what we want to do. There's 75 items here, and since we have a 60-minute meeting, it's going to be tough to discuss them all. But maybe there's some kind of prioritizations we can do. Whoever's opening a candy wrapper, please go on mute. So some of these are like ideas here, like this template thing. I probably should have called an idea, but I did implement it, but I haven't made a PR yet. So the UX items fall into several categories. There are like good to have things like tab completion for Z shell, or problems people had installing like Grafana not working with the context path after you do a fresh install. The Helm is only set up to do certain things. It's not telling the Grafana that. So it's unclear how, if we want to keep all these under user experience or break these down in some kind of, like maybe more than one epic, like an epic for Helm stuff, an epic for our control plane, telemetry components, configuration, or if we want to double tag some of these for configuration or that sort of thing. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
So is the user experience tag really supposed to mean stuff that needs sort of some kind of work group kind of discussion? If it is, then I think a lot of these shouldn't have that tag. They should just be, these are, things that we need to fix. So.
Right. So I tagged everything because I thought that was the rule, that within a few days someone had to triage it as being part of their area, and then we had to get someone on it. So this suddenly produced a problem when I realized I had no idea how to fix this Grafana thing, for example. And, I reached out and I'm like, I need some help. And someone said they tried a new version of Grafana and iframe works for them. So do I need to try to figure out how to change Grafana version and Helm? It's like more than we could easily do on this work group, and I'm hoping to get feedback. So some of these are clearly things like Istio control things that I signed up to do and want to do. The templates for the common tasks, the install command. I know how to help get these things implemented. I know developers who want to do them. But some of these are like, why are the book info pods crashing with weird status? I'm not quite sure. So
I have just a question here. Is it like such kind of task as is part of the user group scope or not? Because what I'm asking here about is, for example, like stuff like Helm chart installation. We got a new Istio installer, which is work in progress. So perhaps some tasks we should go like to API, stuff like that. For example, I have pushed something today to, we just put that in the chat, to the Helm chart, and the guy asked me to push it to the new installer. We just find that out. So I'm a bit confusing about, yeah, I think that's one. I'll just double check.
right. So the user experience is sort of the experience the user has when installing Istio, which means like.
Yeah, that's what I got. I got some limitation. I'm trying to find the chat to push the link. Just 1 minute.
The way the user interacts with Istio is basically Helm and Istio control.
Exactly. Oh, I think that's one, yeah. Then,
so maybe I'll just go through these items. I don't know how to. I'm not using ZenHub right here. Maybe I should have set up something with ZenHub before I did. I'm a little rusty on ZenHub. Fauna and Prometheus. Is this tagged properly? The Helm chart not working. Is it tagged user experience? And who would I give this to?
So we've got some Matt Ring.
okay, I think, yeah, I have been working a little bit later weeks on such kind on Kiali and Grafana, stuff like that, fixing that when I'm managing to deploy Istio on different namespaces. So I think I could manage to fix that, to fix it and test it.
Okay, so assign yourself to this, but in general, we're going to have more of these. So let's go through and try to see what is a must-have for 1.2, so we can sort of make this epic.
So can I actually make a meta comment here?
Yes.
So as an area of user experience, like the Grafana thing seems to be a bug, right? More than a kind of a bigger experience issue or a bigger design issue, right? Do you want to be tagging those things as user experience rather than maybe giving it to the telemetry group, which I think Grafana and Prometheus UI would fall into that bucket?
Right.
You can still tag them with area user experience, but it seems like it may be the area of telemetry might be a better area for something like this to be categorized and fixed through.
Yeah, I'm agreeing here. Like, I think we're going down a path here of saying, anything that doesn't work is annoying a user, so it's a user experience problem that we can't. I want you to sort of scope this to what are fundamental features and things that we think we need to do to just make the overall experience better. And then when you start looking at all these, they should be assigned to whoever the team is that's responsible for that component.
Fundamental issues is key. There is no catcher for Helm install bugs, and there was no catcher for Istio control bugs. So I started just tagging both of those as user experience, figuring they were not anything else. So we can revisit that. Let's try to blaze through what we have here and maybe decide what has to go in 1.2. So I'm really big on this templates for common Istio tasks. I'm going to show a demo of that, so I'm not going to triage that right now.
So that's a classic example of what I think does belong here. That's sort of some feature that we're thinking will make the user experience of wrapping up on Istio easier. So yeah, that seems totally appropriate.
Okay. The convenient install command, I think we 1 and 1, 2. If you're recording 13259. Tab completion for ZSH, not going to happen. We'll skip talking about Grafana.
Let's just take that, that ZSH or ZH. What is that? Why is that a user experience issue at all here? I wouldn't tag that.
So what area does it fall under, though? The only area is the experience of people using.
Okay, I think it's a feature or it's a request for Istio control enhancement, but there is no Istio control tag, is what you're saying. So that's why it's here.
Right.
So Istio cuddle used to be in the tag, the area config, right? So we actually kind of owned it. So I think if you guys want, you can use area user experience to track Istio cuddle related stuff, which probably makes a bit more sense, right? But that pretty much will be the only component, essentially, in that sense, that truly belongs to the user experience area.
That's fair.
Can I ask why the ZISH completions were dismissed? It seemed a bit out of hand.
Why they haven't been implemented, or why?
It seemed like we moved on from that pretty quickly. That seems like a fairly low-hanging fruit. It's just a Cobra config.
Actually, we have a PR for this one. It is almost done. It is blocked because Cobra has not merged a PR that they need to make it work.
Okay.
Right, so ZSH support in Cobra does not work.
Right. Eric tells me that they have a PR that as soon as it's merged, this will work with our PR that is also unmerged.
Have we reached out to Steve to talk about that?
I haven't talked to him directly. I've asked the comment within one of their issues. Or I made a comment within one of their issues for supporting Z shell.
Okay, well, Eric, I've got a PR that just went through there, and so I've got a bit of a working relationship with Steve. If you want to send me a link to the PR, I can give him a kind of a friendly side ping on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mitch. So we'll skip the Grafana one. The outlier check is, no, that's right, that's a PR that's okay to merge. Health check rewrite, I don't understand this one, but it's been double tagged as security and user experience. I'm not sure why. The smaller Istio control, do we want to target that for 1.2? It's not particularly important. It's just a nice thing to have.
What is it? Smaller in what sense?
There's two things. One is we just found that it would be 20% smaller if we compiled it with a different linker option. So that'd be nice to do. And then we found we could make it much smaller if we run this tool on it. But running the tool doesn't help much because when we download the thing, we download it zipped anyway, so there's no point in the tool. But currently this thing is a monster 57 megabyte file. If you compile it with different options and use the tool, it's 8.3 megs. So
this is just another example of an Istio control improvement, but it's in this group because we're adding it.
We have adopted Istio control.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right.
So I thought it's meaningful to compile with the different options to make it smaller, but I don't think it's worthwhile to compress it. It just makes it slower every time you run it.
I agree. So anyone who wants to pick up this as a PR, just do so. We'll put it though in our epic for 1.2, or maybe it gets in if someone chooses to pick it up. I can. It looks like IBM JSON already wants to do it, so I'm going to ignore it. This one already it's already been implemented and is waiting. this is a bug, and it's a bug in networking, so maybe it should be double tagged. I don't know. I feel bad double tagging things because only the area networking is supposed to be tagging things as networking, but I'm sure it is networking.
Yeah, so one of the things I think is the workgroup lead, you are allowed to use the labels correctly, so to speak. So if you think this is an area, or like, this is an issue that needs to be in the networking area, you should definitely tag it as networking.
Okay.
So when we say that we've adopted Istio CTL, we don't mean that we've adopted like the pilot debug endpoint that underlies a lot of the Istio CTL proxy commands, right? That's still firmly in the networking area.
I kind of feel like although maybe is used mostly as for the user experience and for Istio control, because it's being run off of pilot pod, it is still part of networking. Maybe that's incorrect.
I think that's correct. I just kind of wanted to confirm that.
Istio control command to view the sidecar configuration. Do we want this for 1.2? It's tough because not everybody has read all of these.
How's that different than the proxy status stuff now?
So John Howard has already been assigned to it, and I don't know exactly what configuration is wanted here.
I think they want the sidecar config that you can get from the admin port.
Okay, so that's just here because it's something that Istio control.
So
Remember for 1.2, I looked at the 1.2 plan. So someone has said that some networking namespace isolation stuff is going to be considered, and multi-protocol stuff to be considered UX. I think because we are targeting UX and stability for 1.2, and Istio control improvements are 1.2. So this epic is supposed to be basically these things. Things related to tooling to simplify mesh federation, Istio control improvements. Because 1.2 is supposed to be a smaller thing, not a lot of new features, mostly testing. So maybe viewing this sidecar configuration is out of scope. Maybe John Howard has already done it.
And we can mark it 1.2, and maybe can I tag John and ask him if he's started or not, or if he did.
Right. We need to start reaching out to people to see if people who have been assigned this are actually working on it. Okay. This one has been double tagged with docs. Frank, should you be assigned? So I've been seeing kind docs as being stuff that's been documentation. Are you assigning people doc work items?
We haven't yet. No.
Okay. So I created this item because someone asked me to. What's the minimum requirements for each of the profiles? But we need to figure out how we're gonna.
Yeah, docking it is one thing. Just figuring out what the answers are, I guess, is the hard part, right? Which isn't really a doc issue.
Exactly. So I'm not sure how to handle that particular item.
Yeah.
This one's from Kuat, Mixer Custom CRD's deprecation plan. So the telemetry people are going to be deprecating these CRDs. How are we going to expose that through Cube Control? And he's got this nice thing with 3 unchecked items. Update the validation tool to work on the new style CRDs, I think, is probably the UX item. So, and I think we do want this validation tool for 1.2. So, Lee, can you add 1.2.773 to our Epic?
Got it.
Perfect. Gateway sample invalid makes Ingress go stale. Open this one, and I don't think it's a bug, so I'm going to skip it for the, or maybe it's, I don't know, it's documentation or stale. Istio control version. This one I want some wisdom from the community on. So with 1.1, we get two new options on Istio control version, remote and short. But no one knows they're there. I only discovered them when I was doing testing of all the options. And it's really nice. I encourage everyone to use it. It looks so much nicer to do this. Actually, wrong window. To do something like this and see all of the versions as opposed to what we normally do, which is just to see the local version. Take a few seconds, but normally if you do a Istio control version, you get JSON. People have told me this should be the default, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to change the default, because if anyone was doing any kind of scraping of Istio control, changing the defaults would break that. What is the thought on that?
I think the default should change, to be honest. Like, that's useless what's coming out now.
Yeah. Moreover, if it was changed, it would be a bit more in line with the user experience of kubectl.
I agree.
Okay, perfect. This is a nice one. I'm just going to tag this one as good issue. Maybe someone will come do it. It's just changing two defaults, I think. This one I think is being worked on already. Tab completion is being worked on already. Istio control subcommands for multi-cluster is one that I made a proposal on, but no one has attempted to implement this. So I think we might have talked about the proposal before. It's on browser. It's my feeling that one thing we should focus on for 1.2 from Istio control point of view is commands to show you the multi-cluster setup that you've done with commands like multi-cluster info, multi-cluster list networks. I find it frustrating that you choose these things when you're installing with Helm and you have no way of seeing what you have chosen later on.
So why is this a multi-cluster specific thing? It's kind of Istio control info in general, right?
Well,
cluster info. Or...
It may be. I thought of this originally for multi-cluster because I had worked on some other multi-cluster stuff that never made it in last year. So the idea is, first you want to get some information about the configuration. You also may want to change some things. It's pretty easy to add networks and delete networks given without reinstalling from Helm. But do we want to put that in Istio control, or do we want the users to redeploy through Helm? There is the generate service entry, which I had worked on before, and that PR had died, but could be redone again through my new generation piece. And then other commands that people have asked me for: expose a service for remote users, list remote services, consume a remote service. All these commands related to setting up gateways and exposures. I don't know how much of this we want to expose. I feel like we want more than we have now.
Yeah, I agree. We want some of this stuff, but I think this is all part of one bigger picture that we need to design and understand from a user's perspective. And I think it's kind of combining this issue of an easy way to install, period, multi-cluster or not, and that extends into this multi-cluster kind of information and details. And the same with the other general problem of understanding what you have installed, whether it's multi-cluster or not. You know, what options which features have I turned on? Do I have the egress gateway or not? Things like that. So I think we need one issue here to really capture the problem of sort of making the user experience of install and understanding what's installed for multi-cluster or not, so it would be better.
So if you want to work with me either on that or take another pass at what I have, that would be great.
Yeah, I would actually. I'm interested in kind of improving that. I don't know if anyone else as well has ideas. That'd be good.
Okay.
I just have a question here. What is the difference between having this configuration through Istio control and pushing YAML file? Because in some cases, the YAML file is more readable than having such configuration, especially when we wanted to make some change.
Well, more generally, I think the problem is when you do Helm install, according to the way the documentation tells you to do it, you never actually even save the Helm file of the installation config. You get a Helm file and you automatically basically pipe it into apply, kubectl apply, and you're done. So you don't even see that. But more generally, I think that's total. Such low-level stuff in there, like what these settings are, things like that. Because in the Helm templates, there's all these different settings that you can have turned on or off, and depending on those, a bunch of things happen or not. So I think we need to understand better how to convey to the user the features you're getting and turning on, and get be able
So
to be easy
it's
to
more
do
about
and
inspection and validation.
Yeah, sorry.
It's more about inspection and validation than pushing a new configuration to Istio control plan.
Yeah, absolutely, and understanding
Okay.
what you're selecting and doing in a higher level way. Like I think that's a UX problem we have with Istio today.
Remember that the user who's using Istio may not be the administrator who installed it, so they might not know what Helm options were chosen, and it might be hard to talk about. Did I install it with remote networks? Did I install it with MTLS? All that stuff needs to be exposed in a way that makes it easy to make another one that's the same.
Okay, I see.
I think it touches on certain other work groups for sure, because some of this I think would involve better ways of saving information about what's been done, or figuring out how to package things differently. So I guess environments work group is certainly an overlap with this.
So many of these are user errors that were tagged as user experience because a user reported them in, and I don't want to drag you through their issues, which they probably never got back to me on, which is why they're still here.
Yeah, so that's the slippery slope that I think this work group could go down, and to the point that we just literally spend the entire hour, 2 weeks, just going through issue lists.
All right, so I'll try to have these things better characterized for the next meeting, maybe when we do this again. I see we've already spent half an hour on it. We have given Lee very few items to add to the thing, but maybe, Lee, maybe you make the epic with those items that we've done, and then we're going to, those of us here on the call can go back and try to add more or remove them from this list in some kind of fashion until we can get to something that we all sort of like and agree on.
Okay, and actually, I just the multi-cluster, the subcommands for multi-cluster. Did we land on that?
I don't. So Frank and I were going to talk about that, but I don't think it's ready to propose as being part of the 1.2 epic.
Okay.
Does anyone have a pet item that they want to be part of the 1.2 epic so that we don't miss talking about it today?
I have one around the sidecar resources. If you filter by my name, you will see. So this is basically saying that for all sidecar resources, we need to define Istio system. Otherwise, you can't communicate to Istio system properly.
I have your name as Niraj, but what is your name?
So my name is Niraj. My GitHub ID is NRJ Poddar. I can try to find it and send it to you quickly. Hang on. Do you see it?
You could just search on the author list.
So send the link. So
what number is it?
12237. Yeah, and I think there is a big overlap between networking and user experience, depending on what we want to do about it. So if we want to just specify this clearly in docs, then it's purely on the user experience side. If we are going to change some APIs, then I think it straddles both working groups.
Okay. Lee, can you add this item to the Epic, and we will maybe discuss it at the next meeting?
Got it.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Maybe just add me as an assignee. I might take myself off again, but that way I'll remember to look at this.
Oh, perfect.
So I like to do a demo at every one of these user experience meetings, and the person who was going to demo is sort of canceled, so I have my own demo. One thing that people keep asking me for is, why is it so difficult to do common tasks in Istio? Exposing something, we're like, oh, go to the sample file and take book info and start editing it. Or I say, let's set some weights, and they go, okay, well, I spent half an hour on that, and my tabs were screwed up, and I didn't figure out what I was doing. So I wanted to create an easy way to let us supply tasks or ability with Istio controller, some tool to create these things. And I've been playing around mostly with Expose Edge Service. So I have a sort of set of generators here. This is all very ad hoc and simple right now, so ignore sort of how I've implemented it, but I have this Expose Service generator. And I can sort of say, generate Expose Service, set service equals product page. And when you do that, it generates the YAML for doing that. There's a nice gateway called product page gateway. There is a virtual service. The port is the correct port, but it's sort of figured out. If you set gateway equal some existing gateway that exists, it will refer to that properly. But if it sort of doesn't exist, it will complain. So if I say set gateway and misspell it, it will come back and say, well, that is not one.
And
yes.
this only work if you have no existing virtual services defined for that service. I was asking basically if it takes into consideration the existing configuration.
It does not. So what the implementation of this is somewhat strange, and it's in a few pieces because I wanted to see what I could do. So the first thing I did was I wrote Helm for this. So the output that you saw when I did this command, clearly gives us source. It has all that stuff that you see, heritage and all that stuff that comes out of Helm, because I implemented this as a Helm piece. So if we look, there's a virtual service YAML, which is a pure Helm template, and there is a values.yaml, which is a pure Helm values.yaml.
But it does work. It does look at the configuration to look for the service you're generating for, right?
Yeah, so that's the next piece. So when I first tried to tackle, let me just show you the other one. It has MTLS. It's the versions one, which is in progress right now. So when I first did this with Helm, it was fun and easy to do this, but it didn't do any checking of any kind. It didn't validate its parameters at all. So I wanted to do a quick and dirty validation thing. So I made validation, and I put those in config maps because Istio control is good at looking at them. So let me show you the config map that I have for exposed service. So actually, it's somewhat poor right now. First, there's a template. This template is just a Helm command line, and if we don't like Helm, I can replace this with a full template the way that the injector does, putting the complete template in the config map itself. There's parameters. It's not structured right now because config maps aren't, but it sort of says the first parameter is a V1 service, the second parameter is an int, the third parameter is a networking V1 Alpha 3 gateway, and that's all checked. And there are also defaults that are expressed in JSON path, so that if you don't specify the service, it will go out looking at the results from validating the types and let you pick up defaults that way. So this turned out, at least for the ones I've implemented so far, as being a very succinct way of a generic service, right? So, I mean, there's less lines of code in this thing than there is in, say, KubeInject. It's really tiny. It does sort of what's needed. I'm wondering if, for feedback on it, if you think this is the way to go.
Well, so I wonder about the general concept. If you can describe what the CRDs look like with these simplified templates, then does that mean we should actually have this higher level CRD with a controller that dynamically produces the lower level CRDs?
Well, so
that's effectively what this template is doing, except it's done in a static way.
Yeah, it's like an operator already.
The reason I don't think it should be that way is it's a whole other layer of things for people to learn and to know which things are high level and which things are low level. And it also puts us in a straitjacket of, well, the high level stuff is going to be a particular way. With this, the reason I did this was that any Helm thing can be done this way. And so this sort of lets anyone write this and extend it themselves without having to agree to install a bunch of CRDs. So it may be that CRDs in a controller is the way to go. What's your opinion?
Ed, but don't the users have to learn this format of what to specify in the config map anyways?
Exactly. I think it's you end up still having to learn this higher level notion.
Yeah.
Except that now you're stuck. Except that now you have a static translation instead of a dynamic one.
I think purely speaking from the user experience, I understand your intent, which is great. This can lead to more errors because of the failure of having known types.
Okay, so you think this is the wrong way to add common tasks like exposing a service and this sort of thing? You think it's too ad hoc-y?
I'm confused which users are we talking about. There's the user who wants to use this kind of wizard thing to get started. I don't think that user sees any of this. Or do you expect those users can go and add their own custom kind of stuff into this using this? I thought this is sort of whoever's adding new wizard features, I guess.
So I don't expect anyone is going to look at this except for users who want to add things. I expect most people are just going to say generate or list generators. It's going to say we have these things. They'll be documented. And we'll say, oh, you want to deploy your product page, do generate expose service for minus service equals product page, and you're done. You want to set weights 50-50, do set weights, reviews, weight equals 50-50-50, you're done. The idea was just to make it easy to do the kind of things that people commonly do without having them write a bunch of XML.
But it's a whole new API surface.
Well, so it was supposed to be not a servicing API. It was supposed to be a better way than samples. So right now, the API is, I'm just going to look at my local samples directory and find something close, and then start editing it. And this was supposed to be a faster version of that. But maybe others don't see it that way. So, I've asked people what are the common tasks, and I got a sort of list of them, which I started working on. I've talked about add to mesh, I think, at another one of these meetings. But I guess the destination rule is a particularly tricky one because when you deploy a new deployment or delete a deployment, you sort of change your subsets. These were all things that people were struggling with. It seemed like an easy way to get them there. If we want to do a new CRD for it, we can sort of teach them the CRD and get them making it. But maybe people would still want a tool to generate the YAML for that CRD. Maybe the people that reach out to me for help aren't as skilled as the people who are reaching out to others for help. But these are the problems I often see. And I thought maybe if I made it easy for people to create these sorts of things, people would, like developers would contribute them. This would be an easy route to getting them into Istio control that didn't require custom code to be written. All right, well, anyway, I've put a link to this particular document in the meeting notes. So maybe supply feedback there, and I will attempt to incorporate that for the next version.
Yeah, Ed, I think some people are sharing feedback in the chat.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Yeah, Quad, mentioned the kubectl expose function and how this is similar to it, and then John Maz also talked about the features that Kiali provides in the UI.
So maybe we want to just do a command line to make it easier to do via Kiali. I don't know. So I'll take a look at those chat items after the meeting. So the next item we have up is the user survey. So the user survey Ram and I worked on, and it's what we wanted to send out to certainly IBM's customers, but maybe everyone using Istio via Discuss and all these places to sort of get feedback on who is using Istio and what is out there. So this was my first experience making a survey through Google Docs. This is sort of what we came up with, and I'm hoping to see if this is the kind of questions that we want to ask. Ram, are you still on the call?
Yeah, I'm on the call. Yeah, it might be helpful to share the link to this. Are people able to access this link from the agenda and see it?
Hopefully it's on the screen share as well.
I just shared the link.
Yeah, Ed, if you can just kind of quickly scroll through so people can just read the questions.
Sure. So how are you using Istio? When did you start? Your role, your initial day one learning experience. Is the community helpful? What feature of Istio did you adopt first? Adding Istio to your own applications and workloads. How do you feel about the terminology? Do you use Istio control? What area of Istio needs the most improvements? Bunch of choices here. Would you recommend Istio to others? What your hardware platform is? Where are you running Istio in terms of technology, and then also sort of in terms of topology, cloud type, and scale? So are there any questions we missed or?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to use this as an opportunity to understand what use cases customers want to use Istio for, or is it just what are they currently using for and whether they are being successful at it?
No, I think we definitely want to learn what use cases they intend to use Istio for. We added just one question in here about what feature of Istio did you adopt first? Mm-hmm. Maybe we can add a couple more questions or so to get ideas about what they intend to adopt after.
Okay. because this is definitely focused on Istio rather than the use cases that folks want to use it for.
So when we're asking whether the community is helpful or not, I wonder if we should go a little more detailed. Like, do you want Slack? Is Istio.io effective? Is our documentation effective?
Yeah, that's a good idea, Martin. And is the goal of that to determine, what piece of it is it Docs, is it Discuss, or is it Stack Overflow that we need to focus more on improving?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wonder if there's like a star rating or a slider in Google Survey that we can kind of.
For a question, you can have like a 1 to 5 answer.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay. Good feedback.
And I think I had mentioned this previously, but we have 1 or 2 folks at Aspen Mesh who have done this kind of service before. So Ed and Ram, if you need any help, just let us know.
Great. And who is that speaking?
This is Neeraj.
Neeraj. Okay. Yeah, if you have if it was an open survey, that we'd still be able to see the questions or even the results to see what you've learned from it. It would be good to know. Any other feedback?
So after we make the changes discussed here, like talking about Docs versus Discuss versus Slack, and maybe some 1 to 5s, should we send it out or should we have it discuss it at the next meeting? I think the sooner we get feedback, the better, since we want to have a focus on 1, 2 for the things people actually want.
I'd like the steering committee to look at it officially and approve it before sending it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so let's target maybe a week or so.
Yeah, next week, next Tuesday.
Okay, that sounds good. John had asked about Istio operator. Do we have anybody who can talk about Istio operator right now? Because I cannot.
Depends on what you want to talk about.
Is the one from Bonsai Cloud or?
John was asking about it. He's on the call.
There was an Istio operator. I don't know if it was a kickoff or I think some folks are talking about adding it to, I don't know if it's 1.2 or after. I don't know much about it, which is what I'm asking. How are we going to be using operators if we are at all?
Okay, so the plan is we've been working to define a new CRD that describes an Istio deployment, and the operator's purpose in life is to read the CRD and then actualize it, so deploy the right components with the right options to support that CRD. The plan is to make that happen in the 1.2 time frame. It is supposed to be the only major feature that 1.2 adds is this operator. The work has started in the Istio ecosystem org. I'm not quite sure why it's not in the mainstream repo and the mainstream org at this point. I've sent some emails to figure that out. And Martin Ostrowski is kind of running that project.
So the Istio installer is like this is the official support for Istio installation starting from 1.2, I guess.
Yeah, well, I presume for 1.2 is going to be in the alpha form, so probably for 1.3 it's going to be the way to install Istio.
Okay.
So you just deploy the operator, submit a CRD, and then everything goes from there.
Okay.
Is there another group that's been discussing the operator configuration work group, or?
We've had a few, maybe 3 meetings so far as part of the API review process to look at the CRD. I'm guessing officially this is the responsibility of the environment group.
Okay. So the only other item I have on the agenda, if we're finished with operator, people have been asking, and I've been wondering why Istio CRDs don't have a status field. So this has to do a bit with validation. So we have Istio validation that does a great job for single items. We have tools like Aspen Mesh that will sort of your complete thing. But Pilot often discovers problems and it has nowhere to report them or surface that to the user. And we have tools that sort of show you what is wrong. Most Kubernetes types have a status field or events. Why doesn't Istio have such things for surfacing problems or other bits of information?
So multiple reasons. Okay, so this is an area that I have been looking for some time in config work group. So the first one is we didn't get to that yet, right? So Galley is the area where Galley is the component that touches the CRDs and it's going to update the status fields. But there are a couple of there are multitude of issues. The first one is for the first line of defense, where you look at a bunch of CRDs together and see whether they're going to work or not. Like that kind of composite validation, I think makes a lot of sense to implement this in Galley and just expose that information. It's just that we haven't done it yet. The second set of problems is the pilot can actually have a bit more of the runtime information that goes into that decision. So that information needs to be percolated up to Galley so that it can be reflected on the status fields, right? So there's some facilities in the MCP protocol to enable this, but we haven't done the full implementation of it. We are still making Galley as a stable component as for the forward path. And the third set of problems is we want to be able to use the same mechanism as to be able to say, okay, I created a virtual service. Is it active now? Which is actually a very hard problem to do, and we should be able to reflect this on the status field. But we are still going through the okay, how can we make this design? How can we make sure that what does it mean for virtual service to be ready, for example, right? So there's a bunch of design problems that needs to be tackled.
Which work group is tackling them? API or
config
group? All right. So I'm very interested in what sorts of things are going to be there and what sorts of things. So what's going to be in the status field, and then what components are going to be allowed to report to it. So it would be great if either someone who's in the config group could summarize this and tell us here, because I think that's going to be how the users are going to sort of see problems that are deeper than single item validation can check. So the same way with pods, I'm looking for events, I'm looking for the status field. That's going to be a big way people are going to interact with their Istio and stuff in the future. When do we think that's going to be available? 1.2, 1.3, future?
It's no way it's going to be in 1.2. 1.2 is about CodeMo, and there's a very limited set of things that we can do for that. We also need to do an internal refactoring of Galley so that some of these features can be implemented, and I'm trying to get it done in the 1.2 time frame. The most likely time frame is 1.3.
This ends up being a pretty high priority thing to tackle. We have partners like Knative that want to build stuff on top of us, and because there's no way to discover status of the system, they end up just putting time delays and hoping for the best to try and orchestrate things, and that's just not a robust strategy.
Is there anything that the expertise of the people here can help out with? What?
So I believe so the Aspen Mesh folks were actually working on some validation related stuff, and we actually we kind of got in contact to kind of get their stuff into the main Istio repo, right? And if we can get it in a reasonable way, right, where, given a set of protos, like a graph of objects, we can analyze them, having it in that way, then I think we can use that as a library both in Istio as well as in Galley, so that in Istio you can actually say, here's a bunch of YAML files, please go and see if they're valid or not. And then if in the Galley itself, we can actually look at a snapshot of configuration and see, hey, given these set of objects, are they valid together or not? And one path can be like, exposing that out as the status fields, right? So it's the same experience, same error messages you get. It's just that one of them goes through like and updates the status fields of these various objects, and otherwise you'll get a report of it from Istio, and maybe you can use it as part of your CI/CD pipeline.
So, do you think that like Aspen Mesh Istio vet's going to be an input for this? Because I worry that if things are coming from anything other than Istio itself, it's going to be trouble. One thing I've noticed that's been frustrating is when the sidecars go stale because Pilot generated an invalid configuration that Envoy rejected. And I feel like we're not doing anywhere near enough to, when that happens, to report it and figure out which pieces caused it, so that we can create work items to not do it again. And then I'm worried that we make small changes or improvements, like we no longer need a virtual service for a service entry for external service SNI sniffing, and suddenly any external tool that sort of generated that piece is no longer needed. There's like all these things we make a small change, and it just the meaning elsewhere.
Just to be clear, so this discussion was about lending their stuff into Istio repo. So once it lends, it should be part of the Istio proper.
Yes.
It's not an external tool per se in that sense.
Okay.
And who is this?
This is us.
Okay, good. So I was confused because I've been talking with you, but
Yeah.
all right. So Ed, that's the story. Basically, at some point, move Istio vet inside Istio, and then what you were saying, that problem won't exist. Is that fair?
Right. So that is fair. That sounds great. However, so currently many times the proxies go stale with things that Istio vet can't detect. There needs to be some way that when we get a NAC from a sidecar, we can sort of log it in a way that we can go back and say, well, look, Istio vet, or look, Pilot, or look, Galley, you didn't detect this problem that Envoy detected. We need a way to ensure that that gets caught, and the only way we can catch it now is these NACs.
So there is this has been a long-running discussion among various people. It is a hard problem percolating this information up. So it starts with, like even if you put things into Envoy, I believe there's a time delay. Like, one of the things that we want to do is, like, be able to answer the question, hey, I push this configuration, is it active or not, right? So it starts from there, and from there, you can actually say, look, if you're getting a NAC from Envoy, that probably is a kind of a problem from our perspective. Like, it's an Istio problem rather than a runtime problem, right? That's kind of a separate type of problem that I think you need to deal with. It's like more of an Istio bug that you're talking about at that point.
It is, and we need to fix it, and then but often you can't fix it just locally with the validation that's there. It has to be fixed through in the large validator, if that is Aspen Mesh or if that is something else.
But that shouldn't be reflected as part of one CRD status, though, right?
Right. So it's more like we should make it easy to figure out, okay, this problem is happening, so somebody goes and opens a bug for us, right? Because a NAC from Envoy should be rare. Like when we were talking with Harvey, I think like his point was this should be an exceptional error that's coming from Envoy. The NAC is kind of reserved for that. So then, if it percolates up as an Istio bug, and then we can fix it as part of validation or as part of something else.
Okay. Well, I think we've finished our hour. Do we have anything else before I close the meeting? All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Have a good day. Cheers.